Wake up, praise Allah, it's a beautiful day. Family, friends, and fun. What more can I say? More is culture everywhere. It's all on display.
Go to that acceptance piece, offering acceptance.
Same.
No, hold on. Number 5 acceptance in that file. It's got a better format.
In this one?
No, not in that one. That's by itself. Go back into the original class piece. Where's the original file? Yeah, drop that down. Five power of acceptance, right there. This is an excellent piece of getting you to understand the contract. Go to the 150. Purpose: to convert dead energy into credit energy through acceptance. Learn the art of acceptance and the resulting power received by returning energy back to the source. You sent me a notice that I owed you 10. I'll send it back asking you to verify the debt. So we reverse the energy flow. Now you fail to respond to the first notice, right? So I give you a second notice. We're dealing with due process. I'm granting you your due process right. So I'm sending you the second notice. Look, on such and such date, you sent me an offer telling me that I owed you said amount, and I sent you a notice on such and such date asking you to verify the debt. You were given 10 days. You failed to respond, so I'm giving you a second due process opportunity. Your failure to respond will cause your default. Yes.
When they generally send you out a notice,
Scroll.
the entity that's sending out the notice doesn't have a flesh and blood that you're returning your reply to. So when you sending back your reply to that notice, you have to send it back to a flesh and blood.
A physical person doing business as.
Right.
So,
In a private capacity.
yes, doing business as covers both ends. Covers the corporate and the private.
So therefore, you have to do your research and find out who's the head of that department, who sent the notice out.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you will get a name. Sometimes, but yes, you can go on the state website, the UCC division, where all corporations are registered. There's a lot of, I wish I'd have brought that book. It's an actual lawyer's book on debt collection, and they show you all the little secrets of finding a person's and their information and locating their assets. But yeah, you go online and you find out who's either the manager, agent of that office, or who's one of the corporate folks. And doing business as. But the end result, when you send out that notice, you give them time to respond. If they don't respond, you give them a fault. Give them time to respond. Now you've got a default.
So is a registered agent doing business as for a corporation?
Yeah. Well, registered agents are the ones who actually, a lot of corporations set up to receive the lawsuits
Service
and
and
things.
process.
But yeah, they're not really the liable party. They're just an agent who receives.
But what
you
you
can
say
use
an
them.
agent
Yes,
is really
you can-
working for someone.
Exactly. Exactly.
So somewhere in the.
But here's what I'm saying.
Okay.
If I structure your corporation, I would be considered the resident agent who's put your corporation into play. So you can, if someone chose to sue you, they would basically find me listed on the website
Right.
as an agent, as a registered agent. So I would receive the mail, not necessarily liable per se, but I would
But they're
receive
doing
it.
business as.
So if I receive a parking notice with the mayor's name on it, I don't send that reply back to him. I send it back to the department.
His name on it?
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah,
Okay.
his name on
issuing the citation has the name on it.
Huh?
His name don't be on
His
the
name doesn't be on it, it's the person that issuing the citation's name on it originally, then they'll send you one from the finance statement saying you need to pay this bill. And there's no name on that one, it's just from the finance section.
But when it
saying
comes
you
to, I
need to
got one
pay.
that came
And
from
that's
the law.
who you want.
Yeah.
The financing,
Laura Georges.
Yes.
the financing division is who you want.
G-O-R-G.
Because see, all corporations have to have a policy, an insurance policy to do business. They all have to have an insurance policy. And it's all private. Some of you be surprised who hides the best in this society. Everybody that's a part of the motor vehicle division. You will literally have to hire a private agent to find out who runs those offices. The Department of Motor Vehicle, which is one of the biggest criminal institutions in America. The state is a private corporation enforcing the codes of another private corporation. Right. Now go on the internet and see how much time you're going to have to spend to find out who is running or managing the DMV. We got a list of DMVs all over America. And there's some type of agreement somewhere. They're out there. But you best believe you got to do some homework. Because a lot of people have woken up to the fraud behind the DMV. See, we believe that these codes have something to do with government. There's no government here other than your own private government. And all these are private corporations hiring privateers.
You know, I sent a recension notice to the DMV in Springfield. It came back, I never got confirmation of delivery back. And when I went to look for it, it said that it was in dead mail. They wasn't able to deliver it, and they wasn't able to get it back to me, so it went into dead mail. But I went down to the state building downtown and got to
Now,
messing with them at the Secretary
Let
of
me ask you a
State's
question.
office.
You said it was in dead mail. Did you have a return card?
No, I never got the return card back.
That's what they're telling
I had a receipt that I paid, I sent it registered mail, but I never got the confirmation back that it was delivered. So when I went to look for it, the post office told me it was in dead mail, that they couldn't deliver it.
What does that mean?
That means that they couldn't deliver it to the address I gave them, and they couldn't get it back to me. That's what they said.
Did they tell you why they could not deliver it to that address?
No.
You should have asked why.
Well, what happened is, they told me they was gonna call me, they never called me, because I was to talk to the manager or supervisor, and I never
They
heard.
told you they was gonna call you, but they never
Yeah,
called. You
because
wonder
I was
why?
trying to figure out how to get the paperwork and why they wasn't delivered. But when I went
Because
to,
somebody now in the post office is liable.
when I went down to the Secretary of
Tampering
State,
with mail is a federal offense.
Oh, yes, Lord.
I went to the Secretary of State's
You
office.
should get a return address. He should have a return address.
I went to-
Exactly.
It shouldn't even went to dead mail. It should have went back to him.
Thank you.
But it didn't come
It should
back.
have
That's the
came
same thing
back.
that happened to me with Alabama.
But I went to
Okay.
the Secretary of State's on that.
But that's why somebody was gonna call you and never did.
Right.
Because somebody was in the wrong.
But the people at the Secretary of State, once I stayed down there and argued with them about an hour, they sent me up to the 5th floor. And I went to the 5th floor and I talked with a sister named Georgia. And she looked at the paper, the address that I sent the document to, and she said that it went to the wrong address. And then she went in the book and gave me an address to the Vehicles Title Division. She said, that's who I need to send that to.
Okay. You did do your due diligence. But anytime you send certified mail out and it does not come back to you, somebody has tampered with the mail.
Something happened because it never came back to me. And I
Now,
know
ain't
I
no
couldn't
such thing
return
as
that.
dead mail with a return address.
Okay. That's
Thank you. I'm glad you hit a compliment. No such thing. That's tampering with federal mail.
I'll give it to you, but it's-
You know, somebody made a determination what they were gonna do with your mail, your property.
They didn't want to acknowledge it.
Of course not. All right, let's run through some of this. Learn the basis of the administrative process in order to get a contract. Learn that every offer is like money in the bank to you. Learn the procedures when default occurs, including how to initiate bankruptcy in a foreign proceeding. Learn how to take your equity back from banks and other debtors who have been using their credit. Learn how to liquidate debtor properties and transfer title in the public as well as the private venue, and to evict tenants using the same procedure the banks have been using for many years. Now, have y'all not heard me say that?
You said
Couple hundred
evict tenants,
Yes.
so you can evict tenants.
Hold on, the tenants that they're talking about are the so-called creditors on the property,
Okay,
the bankers.
okay.
Every process that is used against you is yours to use against them. And if you go after a bank and you ask them to verify and prove that you owe a debt, and they cannot, you take that into the lien. And you can begin foreclosure. You can have a writ of eviction issued against the banks. I keep telling you guys, the power of the administrative process is a very powerful weapon. And like I said, maybe I went through it too fast or something. That's why we go back to the foundation. If you don't get it here, everywhere else you're gonna stumble. And it's simple. Stop complicating it. That's all that's required. Notice of fault and a default. Now, after securing the default, now is the locking down of the debt. Securing your interest, your security agreements, your financing statement. I'm gonna read through some more of this. Learn how to take your equity back from banks and other debtors who have been using your credit. Learn how to liquidate. I found this about 6 months ago. Learn how to liquidate debtors' property and transfer title to, because my guys send me stuff and they always ask me, have you looked at the emails? And I'm like, dude, my head is in the law book every day. They're on the computer doing some documents. No, I haven't, but I finally looked at it and said, oh my goodness. Learn how to liquidate debtor property and transfer title in the public as well as the private venue and evict tenants using the same procedure that banks have been using. Final product, the ability to contract with any and all private and public entities for your advantage through acceptance. Scroll up. Use the mouse. It's easier. You got too many thumbs.
Finally got a mouse?
Hold on, you're going too far. Come back down. Right there. There are 3 sections of this course: creating a contract, enacting a contract, enforcing the contract. At what stage can you enforce the contract? And where do we know that? Where can we find that? Where in the code?
Your rights after default? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. Right after default. Somebody got it in the book somewhere out there. Contract, an agreement between 2 or more persons which creates an obligation to do or not to do a particular thing. Its essentials are competent parties, subject matter, legal consideration, mutuality of agreement, and mutuality of obligation. Scroll up. Offer and notice is the exact same thing, y'all. Offer and notice is the exact same thing. When you see offer, you should see notice. When you see notice, you should see offer. To bring to or before, to present for acceptance or rejection, to hold out or to proffer, to make a proposal, to exhibit something that may be taken or received or not. A proposal to do a thing or pay an amount, usually accompanied by an expected acceptance, counter offer, return promise, or act. A manifestation of willingness to enter into a bargain so made as to justify another person in understanding that his assent to that bargain is invited and will conclude it. Offer and acceptance. In a bilateral contract, the 2 elements which constitutes actual assent, a requirement of the contract. In a unilateral contract, the acceptance is generally the act or performance of the offeree. Though in most jurisdictions, a promise to perform is inferred if the offeree commits the undertaking and the offerer attempts to revoke before the offeree has had an opportunity to act. Scroll up. Did he fall asleep or you fell asleep? Offeree in a contract, the person to whom an offer is made by the offerer, except to receive with approval or satisfaction, to receive with intent, to retain, admit, and agree, accede or consent to, receive with approval, adopt, agree to. And when you acquiesce, when you quiet, when you let them make an offer and you don't respond, you are accepting via your what? Your acquiescence. Acquiescence is agreement. Scroll up. Accept, tear, from add to capio to take or receive as something offered. Latin, by the way. Receive with approbation or favor. Take as it comes, exceed, assent, a treaty, proposal, to acknowledge, especially by signature, and thus to promise to pay a bill of exchange, consolidate Webster's Encyclopedia Dictionary. Acceptance, the taking and receiving of anything in good part, and it is where a tacit agreement to a preceding act, which might have been defeated or avoided if such acceptance had not been made. Tacit, existing, inferred, or understood without being openly expressed or stated, implied by, silence, or silent acquiescence, as a tacit agreement or a tacit understanding, done or made in silence, implied or indicated but not actually expressed, manifested by refraining from contradiction or objection, inferred from a situation and circumstances in the absence of expressed matter. Being silent can be very harmful today, as you see. Tacit acceptance. Acceptance of an inheritance takes place when some act is done by heir which necessarily supposes its intention to accept and which he would have no right to do but in his capacity as heir. Tacit law, a law which derives its authority from the common consent of the people without legislative enactment. That's a very powerful statement right there. Because we have sat back and accepted so much. There's another piece that talked about when Roosevelt did what he did, the people had a right under Quo Warranto to challenge the everything that was done under the Roosevelt era.
New Deal,
Because-
the first New Deal.
Yeah, the first New Deal. But because they kept silent, it became public law. It was like after 20 years, if the general public does not raise hell, does not take any attempt to challenge Congress to petition for redress of grievance under Quo Warranto, then that period of time allows it to become public law. This is actually the congressional records. Power of acceptance, capacity of offeree upon acceptance of terms of offerer to create binding contract. Scroll on up. When you get the offer just put you in a position of power. What an honor. Why not accept the gift? Since the straw man is a corporation created by the state to account for the credit that they are using in your name, it stands to reason that the straw man represents the United States and their debt, not you and your debt. I ain't gonna do that. I'm gonna do it first. Okay, you are the creditor as the state or the United States as the debtor. They owe you exemptions for using your credit, but since they are bankrupt, there is no subsidy, no money, so you as the creditor will have to get paid by taking equity such as your house and your cars as assets or as set-offs. As one can see from the above definition, you are a banker that can issue bills of exchange intended to be circulated as money, since that is all currency is today. Your credit it should not be a stretch for the imagination to think that you can use your own credit. I don't want to do it at this point, but he's basically right. All money in America today is created off of your signature. That's the only thing that creates money. And I found out something a couple of weeks ago that everything now except the $1 bill belongs to foreign bankers.
Except the $1 bill?
Everything but the $1 bill belongs to foreign bankers.
Yeah, and they're gonna soon cash in on them.
Oh, the $1 bill is still issued off of the straw man. It's still issued. That's the only one that has the red numbers that's on our social security card is the numbers that's on the actual dollar bills. But the other, the 5, the 10, the 20 are all now tied to foreign banks. And I was looking at a tape, the brother was showing one of the Asian banks, one of the $5 bills and one of the $20 bills, circulating numbers belong to these foreign banks. So every time we're using this currency, we actually using foreign currency. Well, it is monopoly money, but literally in the most realist sense now. Everything but the $1 bill is now issued that belongs to foreign banks. This is how they're collecting their revenue based off the debt that they have with the U.S. It's really taking another big.
If you have your bank account titled in its proper person, then that means that no corporate entity can go into that account. That's if the bank would title it in it, in your proper person.
And the bank is not. It's not going to title it to be a proper person. The best way to avoid that issue is to put that bank account into another corporation. That is really key, or even a trust. But that's one of the biggest things. This is why we're doing the business piece, because the best advantage you have in the world of contracts is understanding if everything is a corporation. Your best protection then would be a corporation, because the straw man is the one who's being attacked, but you're the one feeling the attack because you've been made the surety to the straw man. So the real key, when you look at how the wealthy and elite have remained wealthy and elitist, is because they've created multiple straw men by which to hide their revenue, and they do it very well. So if you got your own straw man out there, then your name is not attached to anything, and that's the whole key in their secret society is you want to own nothing but control everything, because that's what they do. They make sure their physical name is on anything. They got multiple bank accounts, multiple corporations, trusts, annuities, everything, but their name is not attached. So because my name ain't on it, you can't attach no liability to it, unless I have an actual, this particular corporation has an incident with somebody who attempts to
What
sue.
about that 50 billion that Madoff had? So you saying that there's a possibility that they can't get none of that money back there?
Go
They ain't
ahead.
finna get it.
Go ahead, bro.
That shit is over there in bearer bonds. They done showed you 2 movies of how the banks are stealing money and hiding it offshore. Lock me up for 10 years.
Hey, the
Guess
U.S.
what? I'm out of prison.
Hey, the U.S. Marshal got him, but he
It's
and
crazy.
in
All
the
this money
end-
that this stimulus money, nobody paid attention to the female in Congress, because the first thing came out her mouth is, hold up, before we issue one more dime of this stimulus money, we need to put perimeters in place to keep this money from ending up in what? Offshore banks.
Yeah.
And they shut it, because that's all that money. All that money is going offshore. It's a game.
Game, baby.
It's a game. Oh, sovereign society. Thank you for the recent purchase or the next one.
On the first one, Dante, it's a book I purchased, teach you how, it's gonna help you how to get your money offshore, safe havens.
I couldn't get you that.
I know, I'm just saying, I'm doing my own due diligence, and I know what you're talking about, just saying that, yeah, it's a whole lot of safe havens out there, and sovereign
What?
society will help
Put it
you.
in the mattress.
Again.
It will help you. Put it in the-
It ain't just getting it offshore right now, it's getting it into another currency. But there's a lot of getting these.
Who's currency?
Huh?
Who's currency?
Oops. Swiss franc, the Dutch mark, the euro. There's quite a few of them out there that are gonna do a lot better than this one you got. All right, let's get back on point. Let's scroll on down. I need, all right, let's go to, go back into the file. I want us to now go the exhaustive of the administrative record. Disclaimer. It should have been at the bottom. Disclaimer, I had already pulled it up.
I did.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Click back on it. There it is. Okay, all government law is private contract law. And this is the piece I've been trying to beat it to you guys' heads. All government law is private contract law. It has to be. Government is a corporation, right? We got 100 cases to talk about the government being a corporation. Law of necessity means when no remedy and relief exists for the sovereign, he is entitled to create his own law. And that's the thing I'm trying to get you to understand about the administrative law, what it actually is. It's simply private law. It has to be private law because it's the law of a corporation. So what then would your law be? If one corporation has its own private administrative law, then don't you also have the same thing?
Yes, sir.
What is administrative law? Contract, but the administrative law is private international law. Everyone in this country, and a lot of places around the world, is considered to be subject to private international law. And again, it goes back to a simple offer and acceptance, or counter offer and acceptance. But I need you to switch your thinking to, first of all, just let go of the concept of government. These are corporations pretending to be governments. And I'm asking you to do that because that'll help you change your mind state so that it simply, once your mind state changes, you already got this information. The bulk of y'all got this information. It's just changing your mindset. When you switch your mind to dealing with a corporation, because anybody coming after me, I look at them the exact same way. A fraudulent creditor claiming that I owe. That's the only way I look at it. I don't care who it is. It's all the exact same way. A fraudulent credit, because everybody here is freaking bankrupt. I'm the only one that has any real money. My money is my sweat equity. Because every time they want me to, when I choose to buy a house or a car, what do I have to sign? A promissory note. That promissory note is money. Look it up in the code. The definition of a promissory note is money. All day long. M-O-N-E-Y. It is money. And I've already paid for the house, I've already paid for the car, but they make me sign a second contract because I'm ignorant of this shit that makes me repay the loan. I just paid for my house because they opened up a bank account in my name. We went through this whole process. But they make me sign an agreement. First of all, I convey the property back, making them the landlord. They're now agreeing to collect the rent. And the rent is being paid by me, the tenant, and that's why I agreed to repay the loan. Property is already bought and paid for when I signed the promissory note. But because of all these other contracts that are in play, they're setting up a new process, and I've agreed to repay the loan, which is actually I'm paying rent. That's why, where do we go when we end up in court fighting for our property? What courtroom do we end up in? Say it again. Landlord-tenant. Has anybody ever paid attention to why you in landlord-tenant court? Because you're not the owner. You're the tenant. And you fail to pay the rent. So I'm going to the court to have you evicted. As a tenant. Not as a property owner. Ain't nobody catching it. And we went in 3 times sometimes arguing the landlord-tenant piece. And the judge said, oh, well, we don't have the other forms, so we had to put it on. This is what the first judge said. We ran out of the other form. Oh, he was funny. That was Judge Lipscomb. He said, we ran out of the other form. I was like, well, you need to go find it. It was too funny. He heard, I mean, I had to give it to him. His response was good, because everybody else they look around and get tapped on. But he said, we ran out of the other form. Well, can't we go down to the clerk's office and see if she can order some more so we can get it right? But it was just too funny. But we never pay attention. You always end up at landlord-tenant, because they're playing a game. They play the game. We're not the owners of the property. We have been classified as the tenants, and they're collecting the rent as the landlord. Scroll up. Special act, a private statute. Now, if you go back and look up the Administrative Procedure Act, they're calling it a special act. Because, again, we're dealing with a corporation. And all the while, they're pretending, as they're putting this stuff out there, they're convincing you, the public, that all of this is government law. When in actuality, it's nothing but private law. They got their private codes, I got my private codes. They got their private statute, I got my private statute. Statute which operates only upon particular persons. You, me. You injure me, I send you a notice. You fail to respond, I give you your second due process. You fail to respond, I give you what? A default. That is between what? Between the parties. This is not public law. This is private law, because it's between two individuals. Between two parties. You and me. Doesn't affect the rest of the people. It's because it's private. That's private law. All the statutes, codes, and ordinances that the city, state, and federal are all attempting to enforce is nothing but private law. That's all it is. Contracting. We ripped up the federal court so bad in Detroit, as far as what they call an indictment. You look under indictment in the fourth, you will see an offer, a presentment, a contract. There is no indictment because there's no grand jury. There's not been a grand jury since 1935. You got a joke in the back room, the clerk stamping a document calling it an indictment. It's a presentment, and a presentment is an offer, a contract. And I showed y'all the last year, actually found the federal codes that said it, that it is a private contract. All this is contract. Special law, one relating to particular persons or things, one made for individual cases or for particular places or districts, one operating upon a selected class rather than upon the public generally. Now, right here, you should understand, when they say upon a selected class or in a particular district, where then should the Administrative Procedure Act Title 5 apply, and to whom?
The government.
District of Columbia is the only place it should apply, and 14th Amendment citizens in the District of Columbia. Because that's the only place that Article 1 authority has any jurisdiction. But again, our mindset has allowed it to be imposed upon the 50 Union States, as opposed to the District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, and some more islands. Scroll on up. Private, relating to a man or woman as opposed to the public or government. Private law is a term used to indicate a statute which relates to private matters which do not concern the public at large. I don't know if y'all paying attention. That's one of the first things you should say to the people who call themselves government. When you slap that Clearfield Trust document in there and you start defining private law, private international law, and coming back to again, where's the contract? Now you just beefed it up. Private international law is that branch of municipal law which determines before the courts of what nation a particular action or suit should be brought. Nation, which law should be brought. Pursuant to the law of flag, a military flag does result in jurisdictional implications when flown. The plaintiff cites that the following under what is called international law, the law of the flag, a ship owner who sends his vessel into a foreign port gives notice by his flag to all who enter into contract with the shipmaster that he intends the law of the flag to regulate those contracts with the shipmaster, that he either submits to its operation or not contract with him or his agent at all. Now somebody tell me why I just read that statement about the flag.
Because he has jurisdiction, because he's letting you know what flag he's flying under, and it overrides whatever international flag that you have, international law, contract with him.
Conflict of law.
And the flag gives what?
Jurisdiction. Who has the primary jurisdiction? Yeah,
What
you
else
know.
does it give?
The status.
What else?
Notice.
Thank you. Notice. It gives notice. And I'm saying that for a particular reason because this is actually what we're dealing with. International, private international law, which is also considered the law of conflicts. It means that there are two separate entities, two jurisdictions, two nations trying to impose their authority in the same place.
You know, is that, I had read one of Tacit's handouts, where it showed the way you should present yourself as far as your clothing is concerned. You actually have to step into the courts. And it showed them properly judged with the feds. Is that a way of denoting your flag to them, or you're gonna bump heads all of a sudden?
That's giving notice in a form. But one of the best ways to give notice, if you're gonna submit your paperwork, the law of the flag gives notice of what? Of what?
Jurisdiction.
The jurisdiction or the law which you choose to be held under. Remember we were talking about choice of law.
Yeah, which one I could come under common
The
law.
flag on your document is indicating automatically your choice of law. So if you got the common law flag, the original 13 states, and by the way, has anybody paid attention to American flag that has the 6-pointed stars as opposed to the 5-pointed? Be quiet.
The one with the gold fringe has the 6 points, and the other one, the regular flag has the 5 points?
The original flag, not the one that Betsy Ross sold, that's how it was changed. Betsy Ross, so-called swearing of the flag, but our original flag, the stars had 6 points as opposed to 5.
It's on Ernest Month's days.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
The Morris flag.
Huh? No, we're talking about the original American flag. The original flag had 6-pointed stars. Again, earlier when we talked about how the colonial piece got overlaid over the original, over the great law. The original flag had 6 points on it as opposed to 5, but they replaced that one with the 5-pointed star. The original seal was not an eagle, but a, somebody tell me what the original seal was.
Turkey.
turkey. No, it was the phoenix bird. The original seal was the phoenix bird, not the eagle. The phoenix bird being the bird that rises from the fire, which also gets its name from the Phoenicians. And all that ties into us. But it was the original seal, the original bird with the olive leaves and arrows was the phoenix bird. And they changed it over to the eagle in the 1800s. But I put that out there for a reason, because in the law of conflicts, one of the most important things is a flag. So if you got the original the original flag of the Americas, then you've already noticed that port, because you're going upon a vessel. If you're going in that port, you want to have the proper flag on your paperwork. He also, I think in one of his pieces, he talks even about wearing a certain style of the American flag on you. Because again, a flag, we're dealing in admiralty, so we have to give that captain who notice, because our vessel is coming into his port, and we're giving him notice of what law we are going to be subjected under, of what law we're going to contract under. I'm not contracting under the admiralty flag, that gold bridge. I'm contracting under the original flag. Yes, ma'am.
If you did not display a flag on your paperwork, but you said it in words in the paperwork, what happens?
That's still notice, but it makes it easier because you're dealing with, when you're dealing in international law, it says right off the bat, the law between what? Different what? Nations.
We need to have that symbolically.
If you come in there and you have not distinguished yourself from a nation separate from mine, then guess what? So we don't put a lot of things into play, but there's a reason why you hear in this society, according to the Bible, God gave man the dominion over all the animals of the earth. Everybody that's outside of the family of nations is what?
Outlaws.
An animal. Everything outside of the family of nations is an animal.
But if you gave them your name and your nation,
Like this.
And we've entered into private international law, the law of conflict.
told them that too.
So what would be the proper flag to post on the documents? The one you just mentioned, or the Moorish flag?
The American flag. The American flag is sufficient, because it is ours.
Without the fringes.
Without the fringes. The third, if you can't find the 6-pointed, just have that 13. That original 13 is sufficient. It is sufficient. And it is notice of what nation. Do me a favor, pop up that expatriation document so I can use it.
Here?
Yeah, it is. The cancellation. I got enlarge it, so it bring up one page. It had 6 points on it. This one is more than sufficient. Brother was saying last night that this belonged to England, and I said, you got to understand where England was and who England was. It was not Georgia across the water. One of the oldest colonies, which is Virginia, was originally England. But this is some of the most important information, this and what country and what government you're in. Under the family of nations, in the law of nations. Under the law of nations and the family of nations. This is very important in this society. because you have now given notice, even before you got in there. Your notice is already superseded with just what I read off the flag and the law of admiralty. Before you physically go in there, there's already a notice given as to what law you're going to contract under. Because that's what we're dealing with is contract law. That's what the administrative process is. The biggest problem is the court that we end up into, we're not into the right court. And that's going to be, we're working on putting together an administrative manual under admiralty. And that will definitely be the last piece. To walk you through an admiralty process so that when this jurisdiction, this foreign corporation decides to impose itself, you can now invoke the Maritime Court for the law of contract disputes between nations to resolve. And there is a community in that venue. This is very important because admiralty deals with this all day long. That's another notice. That's the most important notice in admiralty. And everyone in here is a vessel. Every person on this planet is classified as a vessel. And what's funny is we've been going through the Bible, putting up every aspect of admiralty maritime law out of the Bible. And they tell you what you're subject if you do not raise your pennant, if you do not raise your flag, what you're subject to. Everything that is an admiralty is in the Bible and it's in the Quran. All the whole process. That's why the first 10 maximums that we dealt with are all coming out of the Bible.
So admiralty is really private contract law.
No. It's the contract law between nations. It's where nations go to dispute agreements in contracts. The quasi, which is where we always end up in the regular district courts or county courts, they're using the Uniform Commercial Code under admiralty. But we're not responding in the proper manner because if we were, we would use Title 28, Section 1333 to invoke what?
Choice of law.
Choice of law.
Which is,
Common law.
okay, now let me validate it.
Are we gonna get the file?
Section 13 what?
Yeah,
Does this say the super
1333.
yes.
1333.
Title
Yeah, we run
28,
a little late.
section
But we gonna get into it.
1333, choice of law.
Let me show you. Go back to the file. I hope I stayed on there.
99.
Not here?
No, go back out.
Pull that down. Go to the right. On the gray side.
There's no button that you can click to just go back into the earlier file.
There you go. What are you looking for?
Oh, clear. Okay. It should be in here. It was just hidden, okay.
Oh, pull it down. Touch it. Down there.
I don't see it in there.
There was also an admiralty,
Can we toss the stick back in there? It's a judicial piece under that Maritime.
where is it?
You have
Hey,
it?
George, can I bother you for a bottle of water, sir?
We pulled the
Oh,
stick
here
out.
it is,
You
I'm
got it?
sorry.
Maybe more room. Take the mouse out.
You can take, I was gonna say you can take the, what you call it, mouse.
We don't need the internet?
I ain't even bothered with the document right now.
Internet connected, okay. You wanna, go inside the stick,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, open it up. Okay, I need the, Myers file down
Is it-
here,
Where,
going down.
Down.
Okay,
this one?
yeah. Go ahead, I'm looking for judicial notice.
Judicial, Myers judicial notice?
Yeah, click on that one, that should be it. Scroll down.
Too fast?
Yeah, go down, I want you to go straight to, save the suit. So you doing what?
I'm looking for, there you go. Never mind. Close it. Save the suitor?
Yeah, you've been there, Twitter just broke down.
I didn't know how big the dot.
Okay. Save to suitor, 28 U.S.C. 1333, judiciary and judiciary procedures, jurisdiction and venue, district courts, jurisdiction. Section 1333, admiralty, maritime, and prize cases. The district court shall have the original jurisdiction exclusive.
Go down.
Exclusive of the courts of the states of any civil case of admiralty or maritime jurisdiction, saving to suitor in all cases, all other remedies to which they are otherwise entitled. Any prize brought into the United States. Anybody know what prize is?
Well,
The person being born.
Person being born. In admiralty, if we were out there in the high seas and I was pirates and I caught another vessel, whatever I found on that ship, the ship itself and all
All its
contained
cargo.
ownership would be considered a prize. This is the so-called prize of booty of the pirates, as we called it back in the day. Any prize brought into the United States and all proceedings for condemnation of property taken as prize. When we talked about police being hired as privateers in their private cruisers going among the high seas, and they're doing what? They're attacking vessels and taking their prize, attacking their commerce, their booty, their lives, whatever. But the entire aspect of what we deal with the police force, be it state, federal, whoever, is Admiralty Maritime. They've been given a marquee, a letter of marquee, which is permission to be pirates on behalf of a state or another government official. They've been given permission to commit acts of piracy. Scroll on up. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure abolishing the distinction between law and equity provisions of Section 41.3 of Title 28, 1940 edition based on 1917 and 1922 amendments relating to remedies under state workmen compensation laws were deleted. Such amendments were held unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Against the owners to recover damages as in other cases for the breach of contract to be executed on land, proceedings in a suit at common law on a contract of infringement are precisely the same as suits on contracts not regarded as maritime only, irrespective of that fact. They have sought redress in admiralty. When properly brought, the suit is against the owners of the vessel, and in states where there are attachments, laws, the plaintiff may attach any property not exempt from execution belonging to the defendant. Liability of the of the owners of the vessels under the saving to suitor in all cases the right of common law remedy where the common law is competent to give it, and the district court shall have exclusive original jurisdiction. Cognizance and culpability of the United States to protect the property rights of all seizures on land. First Judiciary Act, Chapter 20, page 77, September 24, 1789. Basically, what they have cleverly done and kept from our awareness is that the entire common law remedy for the protection of your property rights is in equity maritime. When the so-called United States went bankrupt, under the law of nations and international law, a trustee situation has to take place. The Admiralty Court has to come into play now because this government is bankrupt. So with the other creditors out there, for them to come and dispute and make their dispute, Admiralty Maritime has to be in place.
Right.
We get a lot of misnomers about what it is because we don't understand it's where disputes of private contracts between different nations are handled. Now, are we involved with more than one government or entity here?
Yeah.
So there's no other place for us to be logically to receive the right redress because instead of us going into the proper venue, we've been going over there to Butch House telling him, look, you need to tell your little brother to quit beating us up. Well, hell, every time his little brother beat us up, take our money, he gets some of it, right? So I'm not going to tell my little brother to stop beating you up, taking your money, because hell, I get a piece of it. And that's what's going on in the quasi-courts. But when you go to the right venue, everything changes. And we done read this piece, well, let me say, looked at it. Because I'm telling my partner, I'm like, dude, you know, we've been in a coma for 2 years with this piece, and it's saying all
Feeling at the cup when everybody got a plate. You still got to eat even though y'all came late. We all Muslims, we all on the same page. Rise to infinite wisdom, soul on the figure 8. We prostrate when we pray to Allah. We spirit man, we can't ever die. Fight to the lines, honor to those who try. I let my spirit activate and direct. I can not. Young people slumbishly, it's feeling me. Sisters auxiliary, y'all feeling me. Grand Sheik, you feeling me? Temple Council, y'all feeling me? Grand Body, y'all feeling me? Adepts across the nation, y'all feeling me? I had reference to the end of Satan, cause Moors, we want family.
We are the children of one father, and the breast of one mother hath given us suck. Same blood, don't believe in love, but remember the relation that binds us to unity and love.